This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
For the third episode of Vito Sitdown, I am your host, Vito Churko, and my guest today is head coach Bakari Alexander of Detroit Mercy men's basketball. Coach, how's it going?
Wonderful, Vito. I'm glad to be back on with you, and it's an exciting time. Season's around the corner.
It is, and great to be here in the warm confines on the campus of Detroit Mercy as well. And Coach, first and foremost, I saw that you conducted what you labeled as a tweet blitz this past Sunday, where you introduced all your players, coaches, the new Detroit Mercy logo. Now, how many of those do you plan on implementing throughout the season, and what do you plan on accomplishing through those tweet blitzes?
Social media is something that we always want to own and leverage in ways to not only promote the brand, which is our Detroit Mercy Build a Boundless Future approach, but also I think there's a number of different opportunities for us to not only inform folks on what's going on in men's basketball, provide inspiration, to those who may be into that from a positive standpoint. Let people know what's going on with our team, familiarize them with our roster, talk about different aspects of basketball. It might be things, points on leadership. There might be things on how to build cultures. There's something for everybody through social media, and what we use it for is exactly those things. And I think it's a way that we can not only keep ourselves in the conversations and hearts and minds of those who follow college basketball, but we can't forget that we are Detroit's college team. We're the only Division I program in the city proper, and we've been here serving this community for 139 years. Our basketball program is the oldest in the state of Michigan, Division I. 110 seasons we're starting this season, and I couldn't be more thrilled to be at a place with such a rich tradition.
Coach, I can tell you're very excited. And now you also tweeted out about doing something new in the red, white, and blue, and then you added that our past is a springboard, not a hammock. Can you elaborate upon what that means, how that applies to your team this season?
I think oftentimes, there's this notion that, wow, we've had 22 NBA players in Detroit Mercy history. We've had 6 NCAA teams, in our history. Last year we were 5th in the nation in scoring, but maybe we could do to shoot free throws a little bit better, or play a little bit more stingier defense and all this type stuff. And the reality is that's old. It's something that we can't relish in. Time is a commitment continuum of new things that you have to produce. And so when we talk about the past being a springboard, we want to honor and reflect upon those successes and know that they leave footprints towards the future, so that when we produce new things, new results, new championships, new NCAA tournament appearances, new logos and opportunities, we're keeping ourselves in this growth mindset versus a fixed mindset. You ever heard the narrative of, man, this is how we've always done it, versus, wow, what are the possibilities if we do it this way? And so that possibility thinking versus that probability thinking, that future projection versus that past reflection, is what that statement really encompasses. And we want to embrace that at all costs.
And now, Coach, we have to reflect upon last season's team a little bit here. And you guys the team had great success scoring the basketball, not so much success stopping it. Now, how do you plan on rectifying that issue going into this season?
I think what you look to do is you look to evaluate where your roster is from an athletic standpoint, because the more athletic you are in certain spots, the more things that you can think about doing to be disruptive defensively towards other teams' schemes. Now, before you get into that, though, that's part of the story. The other part is, how do we get our guys in a more principle-based defensive mindset, where we talk about things, for example, when the basketball is on the wings, or what some would say geometrically, the outer third of the floor, where should the other defenders be? Should they be on the midpoint of the floor? to help shrink the court in relationship to the basketball. When the ball is moved, should one player be moving in the direction where the ball was passed, or should all 5 players move? When we close out, should we close out with high hands to be disruptive on passes that the offense may want to make? Should we contest every shot? Because Pat Riley, who did studies in the NBA, showed that field goal percentages go down with hard contests versus soft or no contests. Blocking out. Is it truly the end of defense or the beginning of offense? Taking charges, being in position to be in position. Communication. What's going on when we have to negotiate screening scenarios based on the offensive design that's being set up against us? All these different fun attributes that we get to explore from a defensive standpoint is key, because I think what happens when you have a principle-based defensive system like what we're instituting here at Detroit Mercy, it allows our game to travel.
And one of the best players for the team last season offensively, getting the offense going, was Paris Bass, who averaged 18.4 points per game, and he's no longer with the program, obviously. But I've got to ask you, with that being said, how do you plan on going about replacing his offensive production from last season?
Great question. Paris Bass, first off, I think it's important to know, man, what a fantastic young man who I had the pleasure of meeting during the time I came in late April. And I think when you lose a talent of that caliber and you talk about trying to replace certain things, there's 2 different approaches you take. One, do you try to replace those by an even distribution of asking everyone on your remaining roster to do a little bit more? Okay, that's one approach. The other approach could perhaps be the whole ideology of this whole defense turning the ball over by being in position, getting clean rebounds after contesting shots from misses, and turning turnovers into touchdowns, which in basketball equates to points, or pushing the ball against defenses that are most unorganized in a transition thought process, our 4 to 8 second basket approach that we take on misses and turnovers, to try to generate somewhere to the tune of 12 to 16 points in those scenarios. And so that's one other way to consider, replacing those points. Another way we can look at, on doing things is, how do we choose to attack teams offensively? Can we get more trips to the charity stripe or free throw line for those that don't follow basketball lingo? Those things are important as well. We like to think that our offense is a driving offense where we try to put pressure on the rim via the post pass, via the drive, via the cut, via offensive rebounding, in an effort to try to get to the free throw line with the goal of making more free throws than our opponents attempt if we can defend without fouling ourselves.
Now, Paris was one of the guys that was recruited by your predecessor, Ray McCallum. Now, what kind of players do you plan on recruiting to come and play at Detroit Mercy?
We want to identify guys that really understand and fit our culture. And those culture mechanisms come from 5 core values. We talk about unity. We talk about perseverance, appreciation, integrity. We talk about diligence. Those 5 building blocks on who you are as a person. Because remember, here at Detroit Mercy, we're trying to develop people in a variety of different ways based on our school's mission, intellectually, spiritually, ethically, and socially. And so it's very important to understand, as we start prospecting, it's not just through the lens of their athletic talent, it's also through the lens of who and what are they becoming. So when you look at those building blocks, that's one thing. Now there's an identity piece that's also important when I'm looking at talent for myself and through the help of my staff. We want to find guys that's going to play hard, work smart, be extremely tough, that can finish strong, not only through possessions or even through contact if you take it to a micro level, but more importantly, stay together. Are they team guys? And so when we look at those attributes that make up what type of player, Coach Alexander is after. I think what you'll discover over time is that we'll bring players in that are enjoyable to watch when they play, but teams that have a synergy with one another that's unlike, anything we've seen in recent years.
Now, I talked to Terry Tyler yesterday, actually, and he told me that Dickie V, his head coach here when it was the University of Detroit, he emphasized togetherness. And you brought up one of the attributes being staying together. Now, is that attribute, and the other ones that you brought up with me today, reflective upon head coaches that you had, that you learned under?
Without question, as the 21st head coach here at Detroit Mercy, first thing we understand is that tradition never graduates. So what Terry had shared with you is absolutely correct. You have to understand that, okay, coming together, yeah, that's a beginning. Staying together is progress, but working together is what success is. And so when you look at success, you're always looking at all of the time-tested and true things that you see out of championship cultures. And so whether that be Dick Vitale's group, whether you talk about, former Coach Ray McCallum, Perry Watson, all of these guys, Bob Callahan, who had great deals of success in NCAA tournament and NIT berths, we're also talking about men who understood the essence of what I cited with regards to core values. When I look back on my previous experiences, whether that be my apprenticeship under Perry Watson for 6 seasons, whether I look at my time at Ohio University with Tim O'Shea, who's now at Bryant University, whether I look back on my time at Western Michigan with Steve Hawkins, who's still the head coach there, or with John Beeline at the University of Michigan, these are all 4 gentlemen that have one common denominator, and that's team. Sounds like a corny acronym, but they know that together everyone achieves more. Mm-hmm. And so, again, I'm influenced by it. It's in my DNA. When I go to sleep, I even hug my pillow because we're together.
And when I hear team, I think of Bo Schembechler too. The team, the team, the team. And so many coaches have reflected upon that and really emphasized it as well. I can tell that's key to a lot of coaches.
Without question. Coach Watson, during his tenure here, 15 seasons at Detroit Mercy, had on the door as you left the locker room, those who stay will be champions. And I was fortunate enough to be one of those that stayed. And I want our young people today to not only, crystallize that in their mindset. Now, those words are no longer on the door. We're hoping to put it back on the door when we remodel the locker room in future seasons. But I couldn't think of a better way to describe it as Bo did.
Now, back to your predecessor, Ray McCallum, really quick. How will your approach to winning basketball games on a consistent basis both be the same and different from Coach McCallum?
Well, I think what you have to do is you have to recognize that Coach McCallum and his teams did a marvelous job of putting pressure on opposing defenses by having this multifaceted, athletic approach with guys that had a high level of versatility. One of the things I've enjoyed in the early stages of developing this team is their ability to play multiple positions. I think Coach McCallum deserves a lot of credit for that in terms of bringing that type of talent in. We've also added 8 players to the roster from 8 holdovers that returned from that regime. And I tend to like multi-positional players like we enjoyed in Ann Arbor and other places that I've been as well. So I think the blending of the continuation, I should say, of that idea, that Coach McCallum started, that we want to continue now is something that you'll see that's consistent. Now, we'll never say, hey, let's stop scoring 80-plus points a game. I mean, come on. Fans come to see the game of basketball. The objective of that sport is to put the ball inside of the basket. So we'll continue to do that. But at the same time, how can we be stingy enough on defense to maybe take that from 80 to 90 points? A game, and shave off maybe 10 or so that we gave up last year and maybe win 90 to 70. How about that? That'd be fun.
It would be. And now, McCallum, he brought a very calm demeanor to the sideline at Dick Vitale Court. Will you do the same?
I believe that environment plays a role and dictates, some of the bench decorum that you'll see from a given coach. I'm one that's going to fight for our players when I feel that we're getting an unfair whistle. I'm a guy that's going to evoke passion strategically when I think our team needs some energy giving, and there'll be times where I'm in observation mode as a coach. There's an emotional balance that's really key to the coaching seat that allows you to evaluate what's taking place in the game and which gives you the ability to make judgments because you're not losing emotional control. And so, again, there's a sweet spot between those two, but there's also an art to it. When you see your opposing coach getting after the officials, you can't sit there on the sidelines as a, mundane, casualty, of that, because that can work against you. So I think there's ebb and flow to it that you feel, and you try to find your spots without making a spectacle of yourself.
Now, this season's team was picked to finish 6 out of 10 Horizon League teams in the Horizon League preseason poll. Now, will you use that as a source of motivation, a way to motivate the troops throughout the season?
Well, I don't know if that would be the best approach for us to motivate our group. I think the way that we're choosing to motivate our group is challenging them to understand the definition of fun. Fun is doing something well together, okay? And so what we're trying to have fun with is on the defensive end. How many shot clock violations can we get in a particular game? We're trying to have fun on offense. How many assists can we have on made field goals? Our controlled scrimmage the other day produced 29 made field goals. 21 of them were assisted. And so we're trying to take a different narrative as it relates to motivation. What are we doing when a guy gets beat off the dribble? Are we supporting him? Are we rotating? Are we covering for one another? And so what happens is we become process-oriented versus trying to use external motivation, to get us going. Because we believe that the process ultimately handles outcomes, whether that be rankings, whether that be how you finish, because the games still have to be played.
Now, last but definitely not least, we've got to talk about the first annual City College Series, which tips Saturday night at 7 p.m. at Callahan, and an exhibition contest against Wayne State. Now, how did this series come to be, Coach? And what are some of the vital details that my listeners and I need to know about?
Well, I think the genesis of it was a desire for our coaching staff to tap back into some of the historical elements that we've always had from a scheduling standpoint. A lot of people don't know, many moons ago, that Wayne State, I think, who was founded back in 1917, used to play games in the Memorial Building, which is now known as Callahan Hall, as they were trying to figure, out what they wanted to do in terms of athletics. And then there was a series that ensued. It died, it got reinvigorated by Dick Vitale, and then, it kind of died and it got reinvigorated by Perry Watson, and then it died, and now here we are again, this cyclical approach. And so Robert Vowles, Rob Fournier, David Greer, the head coach at Wayne State, and myself, we all thought, man, what could be a great way to not only recapture the series, but do it in a way that could benefit, young people right here within the borders of the city of Detroit. So we partnered with Michigan First Credit Union, Alvin Ward, the director of Detroit Public School Athletics, and others, to start this city series with the hopes of charging $2 a ticket, try to get in upwards of 8,000 fans. Michigan First comes in and doubles the proceeds that are generated from the tickets, and then we cut that check to a program K through 5 that usually has an annual budget in and around $30,000. So imagine 8,000 people, 16,000 fans, $32,000. Wow, we've doubled a budget for some young people who could benefit not only in athletic programs, maybe reading literacy, classroom supplies, etc. Wow, what an impact. And I hope everybody can come out at 7 o'clock and join us in that effort.
Should be a great cause once again Saturday night at 7 p.m. at Callahan Hall for the City College Series against Wayne State. Coach, thank you very much. Best of luck to you this season as well.
We appreciate that, and we ask all of our listeners out there, and you as well, to remember the Titans.
Sounds good. Love it. Thank you.
You bet.